All right, good evening, everybody. I am going to show a few introductory slides that I think actually nobody here yet needs, but I am going to share them anyway. All right, welcome everybody. Please, if you want to change your name on your little Zoom screen to add your organization or affiliation and your pronouns if you want, that would be great. Also, please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat, and you can also say what brought you here this evening. That's also always fun for us to see. Our mission is to advance sustainability and resilience across LA through advocacy, sharing of best practices, and community action. This is a list of our committees, and we have one working group, and we'll hear from most of these folks at the end of the meeting, updates from them. And anybody who's a stakeholder in LA is welcome to join any of these. We are recording. This will be very interactive. You can use the raise hand feature to participate. We have community agreements that we do expect everybody to follow that we'll review in a minute. And we also have an evaluation form that I'll put in the chat in a bit. And we would love to hear from you about what you liked and what you did not like. Okay, tonight we're going to just get through these this housekeeping stuff in a minute or so, and then we will jump into the food waste program with LA Sanitation and Environment, and then we'll hear from Councilwoman Katy Yaroslavsky, and then, as I mentioned, we'll hear from our committees, and then anybody who wants to is welcome to make an announcement at the end, and then I will hope to remind you about the evaluations. Okay. Here are our community agreements. If you can have your camera on, it's nice so we can be building community. Please assume good intent and give people the benefit of the doubt. And if you aren't, then you can fake it. And so you don't necessarily need to respect or appreciate people, but we ask you that you demonstrate respect and appreciation. The chat is open. We love the chat, but we ask you to refrain from getting too tangential, to keep it on topic as much as is appropriate, and listen, and also step forward and then step back. So those of you who tend to talk a lot, maybe kind of monitor that and talk less, and those of you who tend not to talk, maybe monitor that and talk more so that we can really hear from everybody in the room. Be as concise as possible, once again, so we can hear from more folks, and of course have fun, because if it's not fun, I don't think we're going to do it. Okay, let me stop sharing, and then I'm going to hand it over very quickly to James. Where did James go? There he is. Here's James Roska, who is with LA Sanitation and Environment. James, I will let you introduce yourself. And also we have Daniel Meyers, who is also with Sanitation, LASAN, and they are going to walk us through the new food waste program. And they're going to spend, I think, about 15 minutes or so doing that. And then we will open it up and they'll stay with us until about 7:30 or so, when we will hear from Councilwoman Yaroslavsky. So we'll just have an open conversation and we can get all of our questions and thoughts and suggestions and concerns addressed, we hope. Okay, I'm handing it over. Thank you, James.
Sounds great. Thank you, Lisa. And is everyone able to see my screen I shared? Zoom has a tendency to like drop everything else, so I'm not quite certain you're all seeing what I'm seeing.
I'm sorry, what did you say, James?
I see it.
Can you see the presentation? And is it updating?
Yes,
I just
your
changed
slides
the
are up.
slides, so just wanted to make sure. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for having me. As Lisa mentioned, my name is James Roska. I am the acting environmental engineer and program manager over Organics LA, which is LA Sanitation and Environment's implementation of our curbside organics program. As Lisa mentioned, today we're going to be focusing primarily on the new curbside organics program, but I am also joined by Dan Meyers, who is our division manager over our commercial franchise division, who oversees RecycLA and the commercial customers. So we'll be able to address questions as it relates to organics on both sides of the house. So for a really quick overview, solid waste in the city of LA is kind of split up into two methods of collection. The first is LA Sanitation and Environment, who handles all of the single family households and small multifamily complexes of 4 units or less. And we do also service city facilities such as City Hall and our own city offices. And then the commercial side of the house, which falls under RecycLA, is our commercial franchise system, which services approximately 65,000 medium and large multifamily household complexes, condo buildings, and commercial businesses such as fast food restaurants, sit-down restaurants, you name it, offices, the like. So for today, we're going to be discussing what sanitation does in-house and the new organics program. So sanitation, as I'm sure most of you are very familiar with, provide our household service. So this is for our blue, green, and black bin. We do also have a brown bin program for those residents that do have horses on their property. So we collect horse manure and stable bedding. And then on top of our regular curbside programs, we have a number of other programs related to solid waste. So bulky item collection, recycling of mattresses and tires, dead animal collection, as well as the collection of household hazardous waste at our safe centers and other mobile drop-off events. So our focus today is going to be looking at the green bin, which historically has been used for only yard trimmings, and its expansion now to collecting all organic waste, particularly food waste. So RecycLA is our new curbside organics program. This is to meet the requirements of Senate Bill 1383, which say across the state that all cities now need to have a collection program in place for all organic waste, and specifically targeting food waste as like the largest category of organic waste. Sanitation has had a long-standing green bin program where residents could already recycle their yard trimmings and yard waste. And this program is now expanding to include food waste, food scraps, as well as food soiled paper products. So residents that are serviced by sanitation can now place these materials into their green bin along with their yard waste to be collected by sanitation and then in turn composted. So residents can place food scraps directly into their green bin, but to make the segregation of food scraps more convenient and to also provide an education and outreach tool to residents, sanitation is providing a complimentary 2-gallon kitchen pail that residents can pick up from any of our 6 waste collection yards, and I'll go into more detail on that in a few slides. Basically as a means for them to be able to learn about the program, have it as a quick resource and tool, and to help make that food waste collection more convenient in their kitchens and in their homes. So really the process is very simple. As I mentioned, you are now just going to segregate food waste. Instead of placing it into your trash can to be sent to the landfill, you are going to now collect it in a separate, through any sort of separate method. This can be using the pail that's provided by sanitation. You can use a Tupperware, a paper bag, a bucket, any container that you have at home to basically just separate those food scraps. You will then place those food scraps into your green bin along with your existing yard waste, and then you can set all of the material out for your normal weekly collection by sanitation. So nothing is changing in terms of your collection frequency, directions to set out the green bin. Everything at that point is business as usual. So what can go into the green bin? So now the 2 major categories that we're adding include food scraps and food soiled papers. And when I say food scraps, I mean anything that you could have consumed or was a part of something you could have consumed. So people are probably most familiar with composting fruits and vegetables, but through this program, you can basically compost anything. This includes meat, bones, fish, dairy, cheese, and then eggshells, rinds. And then when we talk about food soiled papers, these include things such as paper towels, napkins. We do allow paper plates and takeout boxes that are 100% fiber-based and do not have a wax or coating on them. And you can even place greasy pizza boxes now into the green bin to be composted. And then of course, your existing yard waste that you're already placing into the green bin, such as grass, twigs, clean wood, and flowers, will continue to go into the green bin. So what cannot go into the green bin? Of course, we do not want plastics, and particularly plastic bags. One of the things about the curbside program is that we're not allowing any type of plastic bag, including those that are labeled or sold as quote unquote biodegradable or compostable. The challenge with these bags that we've seen from discussing with the composters is that they don't actually break down in the amount of time that the composters compost the material. So when they're trying to sell their compost to the agricultural industry and to farmers, you know, these plastics are still mixed in with them. They haven't fully broken down, and it causes a lot of issues for them on the back end or through their processing. And then, of course, all of the other things that won't break down, such as glass, produce stickers, rubber bands and twisty ties, anything that has a plastic or coating on it, and then just anything else that should either go into the trash or into your conventional recycling blue bin. So residents at the start of the program, our program launched on January 16th. So all customers serviced by sanitation should have received a postcard in the mail directing them to this website, www.lacitysan.org/organics. This is sanitation's homepage for all of our organic waste related projects. So not only our curbside organics program, but a number of other programs such as our farmers market food waste drop-off, food waste prevention, backyard composting. So all of those resources can be found on this landing page. But of course, for today, we are focusing on our curbside organics rollout. So going to this landing page and clicking on the curbside organics site, you can learn all of the information about the program. And more importantly, residents can learn how to pick up that complimentary kitchen countertop pail. As I mentioned, sanitation has these pails available at our 6 waste collection yards between the hours of 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., 7 days a week. So going to this organics recycling page, you can click this link for how to get a free kitchen pail. And from there, you will be directed to a website to locate your closest sanitation yard and be able to schedule that pickup. We are also working to expand this pickup list to more locations. So we've been working with various council offices as well as the LA public libraries to try and find additional sites for residents to be able to pick up pails. So using this website, residents can basically put their address into our validator tool. From there, it will confirm that you are a sanitation service customer. So it will cross-reference your address against our customer database. And then it will also direct you to which waste collection yard or alternate pickup site will be the closest to you. From there, you can select the location, and then you'll be directed to a scheduler where you can basically select the date and the time. We have 1-hour windows available at all of our locations to basically schedule your pickup. We do also have walk-ins allowed, but we prefer that residents schedule their pickup just so we can anticipate how many people will be coming in any given hour. And then on your actual pail pickup day, you will go to our yard and just follow our signage as well as the directions of our staff. Staff will confirm your either scheduled or your scheduled appointment, or if you're a walk-in, they will record your information. They will provide you with one of our Organics LA kitchen countertop pails, as well as an informational brochure, which explains the program, as well as a number of other helpful resources and information about food waste prevention, backyard composting, and everything related to organics. And so with that, that was a very high level look at basically the implementation of the program. And I will turn it over quickly to Dan to just give a general update on the commercial side of the house. And we figured that there would be more probably conversation as questions come up. So I will turn it over to you, Dan. I can stop presenting for now.
All right. Thank you, James. So again, Dan Meyers, I'm with LA Sanitation.
Sorry, James, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yeah, give me one moment. My window instructions seem to have vanished on me. But there we go. I think I got it.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, again, here I want to talk a bit about our RecycLA program. So waste collection really happens in 2 major ways in the city. We have LASAN that collects from our single family, our duplexes, our smaller multifamily complexes, typically 4 units or less. And then we have our RecycLA program that collects from larger multifamily complexes, 5 units or more, and essentially all commercial, industrial is collected under the RecycLA program. And the RecycLA program, cities divided up into 11 different collection zones, and we have 6 different service providers that provide service for solid waste, for recyclables, and organics in each one of those zones. So the good news is we've got these multiple RecycLA service providers, and I'm sorry if I use the word RSP, that's just the acronym that we use for our RecycLA service providers. But whether organic service is provided by a RecycLA service provider or by the city, or even the blue bin, the program works essentially the same in terms of what material can go in those bins. So, but the programs are being rolled out a little bit differently, and there's slightly different requirements depending upon what type of business you are in response to state regulations. So I want to talk a little bit about those regulations just as background, and then I'll get a little more into how we can participate. So the state over many years has come out with a number of recycling related regulations. The first to come out was AB 341 that essentially requires commercial businesses and multifamily properties that have more than 4 cubic yards of waste service to have recycling, to have a blue bin. We had AB 1826 that came out. That was the first version of organics. And then SB 1383. That's the most recent version. That's the version that essentially requires organics recycling, just as James has described, all organics for all residential properties and all businesses. But just as an additional note, the regulations require more in terms of organics. It actually requires certain commercial edible food generators, and I'll list what they are, to actually participate in food rescue also. So they're required to recover all surplus food. They have to have a contract with a food rescue organization and maintain certain records. So, but it's broken up into 2 different tiers. Yeah, we have our tier 1, which is our wholesale vendors, our food service providers, large grocery stores and supermarkets. And the requirements for food rescue actually began in January 2022. In January 2024, it moves on to include additional businesses like larger restaurants, hotels, educational facilities, large venues. So it expands. So in SB 1383, there's a lot about organics. For RecycLA is a little different in how it operates in terms of the relationship between the service providers and the customers. When RecycLA was rolled out, it was rolled out where customers charged a base rate that was calculated off their level of service for their black bin, and it included a blue bin. That rate did not include a green bin. It did not include a green bin at that time. We awarded the contracts in 2017 because we knew we needed additional infrastructure to be developed to support all the organics recycling that was needed. So fast forward to today, and the new regulations is now we're in the process of bringing green bins into the program. But those green bins do come with an additional cost. And I will spend a little bit of time on that cost and some of the ways that it could be mitigated. But it takes a conversation between the property owner, the manager, the landlord, and the RSP to get that started. Wanted to slightly touch on the fact that SB 1383 actually requires in its regulations that beginning in 2024, that businesses that aren't in compliance with all parts of the regulations, that the city is required to begin to enforce through monetary penalties. So what we're hoping is over the next year, we continue to work with all of our customers, bring them in compliance so we don't have to get into that arena of compliance. But here's how a property owner that doesn't have a RecycLA service, doesn't have an organic service right now, what we ask them to do is to call our customer care center, open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 1-800-773-2489, and request a waste assessment for organic services. When that happens, you're calling in, you're talking to the city. The city creates a service request, sends that to the service provider. They then make contact with the customer to come out and perform a site visit and a waste assessment. And I cannot emphasize this enough. This is the opportunity for every manager or property owner to really take a look at and evaluate their waste services. Again, if you just add a green bin and not really look at what's in your black bin and what can be removed, then you're not taking advantage of all of what RecycLA has to offer. Because I talked about in the beginning where your rates are keyed off of your black bin service. And with blue bin, you can get unlimited blue bin service collected at the same frequency. So you can have 1 3-yard black bin and 2 3-yard blue bins, and you're just paying for the one solid waste black bin. So it's really opportunities as they're bringing in this additional service to really look at all their service needs. Now, what I hear a lot is residents that are living in apartment complexes right now that don't have green bin service. I do assure them we're in the process. The RSPs are in the process. But what they can do right now to help is talk with their property manager, talk with their landlord, and let them know this is a service that they want. This is a service that they know is required. Because what we have heard from a lot of property managers along the way is, I don't think my tenants are going to be able to recycle their organics or even going to want to. So we need to start to change that thought. And that can start with the tenants helping us by letting their landlords know, I want it, I want to participate, I know it's a requirement. Please arrange for service. And then again, what we ask is a property owner contact LASAN at our customer care center and arrange for service. And in the meantime, they actually have some options. They actually can go to the same website that James had directed you to earlier. And there are farmers markets located throughout the city that will accept food waste. Now, this is not ideal. We want green bins at every location, but we want to have also the ability for everyone to be able to recycle their organics. So this creates some of a stopgap before the green bin is delivered. And a pitch, and it's always our pitch. Number one is really take a look at what you're throwing away. shop a little, shop a little, shorter on time span, don't buy as much, and really look at what you're throwing away and just purchase less. So with that, you don't have that food waste to begin with. And with that, I'll stop and I'll turn it back over for questions, Lisa.
Great, thank you. I have about 10 questions, but I will wait and see if other folks have them. So if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, I'd rather do that than have folks go through the chat, if that's okay. Joanne, go for it.
Oh, Joanne, you're
You
muted.
are muted.
I have a list, not as long as yours,
Oh.
Lisa. So used cooking parchment, does that go in or not? Do you know what it is?
So, yes, so cooking parchment can go in. We have actually asked our composters, because there is the brown as well as white paper parchment. Their preference is actually just the brown parchment, because those white parchments are often bleached or dyed. So if it is a brown parchment paper is best.
Okay. And if my mother uses her napkin to blow her nose and then puts it in her plate, can I recycle that? I have a very old mother.
I would say it is still safe to place it in the green bin.
Okay. And all foods, including things like vinegar, can go in?
Yep,
Yes.
and anything that you could have consumed, so including vinegar, condiments, sauces, can also be
Okay.
placed along with your food
All
scrap.
right. Uh-huh. And so then just 2 more questions. Once upon a time, I put orange peels in my green bin when I used to keep it in a garage at my previous home, and it started to get mold on it. So is this, are we going to be starting to have science projects with some of this, or if it's not exposed to air, or if it's in a warm place, are there going to be issues?
Yeah, so especially during warmer months, or for those items that will, especially things that will have odors, so maybe for like meats and seafood or dairy, our recommendation is to still keep those scraps refrigerated or frozen throughout the week if you have the space available, and then just setting those out either the day of or the day before your collection.
Okay.
Some other tips that we also provide are, because you can put paper products and food soil paper, either wrapping them in paper towels or any paper bag. And also when placing it into your green bin, layering your food scraps between your yard waste. So putting down a layer of like leaves, twigs, and branches, and then emptying your food scraps and then covering it with more leaves, twigs, and branches will also help to both absorb odors as well as moisture. So that will help to reduce some of those issues. We do know it gets hot in LA in the summers, so maybe not emptying your pail out as frequently, but of course that'll vary from person to person based on the size constraints in their kitchen, as well as just how much food waste they're producing.
Right. And I guess because we want to save water, would it be okay to use to put a compostable bag as a liner and then throw that in the black bin, empty the compostable liner and then into the green bin, and then throw the green bag into the black bin? Can we do that?
So if a resident did want to line their pail, so long as the liner did not go into the green bin at the end of the day, that is fine. I think our preference would be no liner at all, just to reduce the production of the waste of the liner. But if that would be a resident's preference, they can obviously do so, just so long as it doesn't end up in the green bin.
Right. I was just thinking about saving water. That's all, because it's a lot of work to wash those bins. That uses a fair amount of water. So
But you could, I'm thinking out loud, you could rinse out the bag. If it's just a little bag, where your food waste is, and you could rinse that
Oh,
out.
it's too hard to get the stuff off. I mean, it would really end up having to go into the black bin. I mean, it just wouldn't. I mean, rinsing those bags or rinsing the pail is going to use up a lot of water. I mean, plus, I mean, luckily I have a big laundry sink. I could do it, but I'm just thinking, I mean, we can try it and see how much water it uses.
I
but-
want to interrupt. I like what Charles said, because that's what I suspect too. Charles, can you just say that, please? And I forgot to introduce our board members, and I forgot to introduce myself. But Charles is one of our board members, as am I.
Hey, I'm Charles. In response to Joanne, it's my understanding that whenever you're talking about generation of plastic, you're talking about something that requires a lot of water in the production. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of the fossil fuel capture, to the creation of the liner. And it is generally the rule that whenever you're talking about concern about rinsing or washing something, the water used in the life cycle production of the creation of the liner is far greater than the water that you would use to rinse your bucket every single time.
Got it. Okay, and then just one last question. What happens with our mulch program? Is that just going to come from urban forestry or whatever? Because this is no longer going to, I mean, LASAN provides all this mulch for people, which we utilize. And I'm just wondering about that program losing all the leaf clippings. I know you have an overabundance.
Yeah, so sanitation's mulch program will still continue. So we do collect mulch from city operations as well as some private gardeners. So there will be a reduced amount of mulch produced, but the mulching operation will still continue. We are also then looking into the ability to purchase back compost from our new composters to have that also available basically back to residents. And then just one more point in regards to like the cleaning or washing of the pails. We do recommend residents can use a liner. So using like a paper liner or paper towel liner in the bag, or a paper bag in the pail. And then in terms of just washing the pail, keeping the pail in your sink while you're doing your normal washing can help to, kind of make double use of that liquid. And the countertop pail is also dishwasher safe. So if you are running a load in the dishwasher, you can stick it in along with the rest of your plates and utensils. So that's also just other ways to try and minimize.
What are the dimensions?
It is an 8.5. It's about the size of a piece of paper. So 8.5 by 11 is like the footprint, and then it's about 8 inches tall.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Okay,
yeah, it takes up about as much space as a regular office piece of paper on your countertop.
Great. Okay, that sounds good.
All right, thank you, Joanne. Melanie.
Thanks. Yeah, I put it in the chat. I'm wondering, I didn't see very many farmers markets that are accepting waste when I looked on the city's website. And I've been trying to get hours to do it. Is there a process are there people in LASAN who are serving as liaisons here that can say, hey, here's the form to fill out. We can support you in this. How did you get the ones that are doing it to do it? Are you supporting them? Is there a process whereby we can encourage our local farmers market to do the same? Because we're very much surrounded by multifamily buildings over 4 units. And it's going to be a while before people are in compliance. I've got folks in my local Buy Nothing group who are, exchanging. It's like, well, my green bin is this day, and you can come here, and so-and-so's got a worm farm, and you can go there, and what's in my neighborhood? Where can I dump because people are getting pails anyway, because they want to do this, but they don't know where to dump. So getting our farmers market to do it would be awesome.
Yeah, so our farmers market food waste drop-off is done in collaboration with LA Compost. So they're a local nonprofit that operates the actual collection at the market. We received a grant from the USDA about 2 years ago to expand to 5 farmers markets with them. So there were 5 farmers markets originally located closer to the Northeast LA area. And then our Board of Public Works provided additional funding for 10 more markets, of which 5 of them have been established. So LA Compost is the one making those direct, I guess, connections with farmers market operators, because they're the ones who get the buy-in to basically have a space and to be able to provide the collection. So I would say reaching out, you can still reach out to us at Sanitation and reaching out to LA Compost to kind of look at where more opportunities for farmers market pickups can take place. A lot of that is restricted both based on LA Compost staffing and availability, as well as then the infrastructure to do the commercial or the community level composting, because LA Compost takes the food scraps from those farmers markets and then composts them in their local community composting hubs. So they also aren't looking to expand too quickly until they have their infrastructure on the back end. But we do plan and hope to continue expanding to additional markets.
Yeah, thanks. I talked to them a couple of years ago about this, and they didn't have the infrastructure at the time. I understand they have a site in Sepulveda Basin, which might be helpful, but just to note on that map of the markets that you have, the 10 of 15 that are funded, there's nothing in the San Fernando Valley.
Yes, we are working to, I believe they have a location at in Northridge for a drop-off, and we're working on, I believe, 1 or 2 additional markets. So yeah, our goal is to make sure that those markets are spread from as far up as the valley to as far down as the harbor. So that is one of the priorities that we emphasize them when looking at developing these additional sites.
I'm voting for Studio City because of our density, just so you know.
All right, thank you. Nish.
Yeah, hi. So I was going to ask about the compliance deadlines, and I see Daniel just posted that that all buildings were to comply with the 1383 by January of 2022. But I live in downtown, and we still don't have composting available or any of the composting bins. So I was wondering what forces buildings to, or multi-unit dwellings to hurry up and comply. And yeah, if you can kind of speak to that, I'd be interested.
Well, certainly, Nish, and I saw there were some other questions in the chat also along those same lines. So what I wrote was correct. SB 1383 was that went into effect in, I believe, late 2021. Or late 2020, require compliance by January 2022. So on the LASAN side, and it was fast. I mean, these regulations were years in the making, and then released with a very short deadline to respond. On our own LASAN curbside, it took us a year to get all the contracts in place so we can support it. But that doesn't change the compliance requirements. So I just want to make that clear, right? So LASAN, we're in compliance. We have right now in RecycLA, we've got 66,000 customers. About half of those are multifamily properties. We have 7,500 of those just altogether participating in organics recycling. And the numbers are increasing every single month. So it is a requirement. In January of this year, the city council adopted an ordinance to also incorporate all of the SB 1383 requirements into our ordinances. So the city now has the ability for compliance. So we're in the process of putting together compliance letters. We're going to be sending notices out to all the businesses that are not in compliance to gain compliance. That's going to help the service providers work with their businesses. And I want to make clear, every business, from what I understand, has been informed through newsletters, bill inserts of these requirements. But it's just a process to get them on board. Beginning 2024, the regulations require, and it's incorporated in the city ordinance, that businesses that aren't in compliance will essentially begin to be fined. So that's the stick that comes along with the SB 1383 regulations. I would prefer to never have to write any fines or penalties, but really get the businesses to comply over this next, 9 months, 10 months.
So Daniel, when you say businesses, do you also include apartments in that?
Yes.
Apartment buildings in that? Okay, so you're saying by January 2024, if apartments aren't offering composting services in their units or in their buildings, then they will be out of compliance with the law and they'll be fined accordingly. Is that right?
Yes, with one little nuance, they're out of compliance right now. Okay. And in January 2024, that out of compliance, if you're a multifamily property, will bring penalties along with it.
Financial penalties.
Financial penalties.
Daniel, I'm going to interject. My understanding, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, is that yes, they're out of compliance, and LASAN was also out of compliance, and nobody is mad at the apartment owners yet, because if they were all in compliance, the RecycLA franchisees would have a huge problem on their hands because they're not ready for everybody to be in compliance. Is that correct?
No, Lisa, that's actually not completely correct. The infrastructure is there. The infrastructure is there to process the material. Now, what we're talking about is rolling out bins to 66,000 customers. And that takes time. But there isn't a stoppage right now.
Okay.
As many people call in and request organic services, our RSPs can get out there and get them set up. And that's why I'd really like to take this time right now to do that, as opposed to starting writing fines to everybody in January and then have this everybody wants to comply. So, but they're out of compliance now. We want to bring them in compliance.
Okay, let me ask one follow-up question, and then I'm going to go to my friend Armgard. There was some outreach, not as much as some of us think there perhaps should have been, but there's been some outreach to the single family homes and folks living in smaller apartment buildings. But has there been, and you mentioned something about your understanding as RecycLA has sent communication to businesses, and to Nisha's point, I guess when by businesses you also meant apartments. Has there, but you're not sending, nobody's sending anything to residents in apartment buildings, is that correct? So they're sort of missing, they're not part of this outreach. Is that fair to say? So that is fair to say from a compliance standpoint, because it's the property owners or the management company are the ones that have to. I mean, a tenant can call in and say, "Hey, I want a waste assessment." They'll go, "Okay." They'll call the landlord and they'll go, "I don't know what you're talking about." So, it takes the participation from the landlord. Once they're set up, then the RSPs, or service providers, then have the ability to start bringing outreach and education material out to be utilized by the tenants. So, but we really need to get the service in first, and then educate them on how to use it. Okay, this is super helpful for me. Thank you. Armgard.
This might be a really stupid question, but the thought of a moldy bin and all your food in it kind of grosses me out. I was just wondering, is there any way that, the small buckets that you guys supply, is there any way that you could, a person could leave the small bucket on top of their big bin, and that the truck would empty the small bucket out? Because the thought of cleaning a small bucket is less overwhelming than cleaning a huge bin. But I guess they wouldn't probably do that, would they? But I think it'd be super helpful if they collected the smaller version, because it's easier for people to clean the smaller version so that people could still put the rest of their stuff in the bigger bin, but also keep the food in the smaller bin. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the way that our curbside program works is over 99% of our routes are serviced by an automated side loader. So the
Right.
truck operator pulls up to the house, the side arm on the truck lifts
I've
the
seen
whole
that,
bin
yeah.
and then tips the whole thing in. So that reduces the need for our drivers to get in and out of the vehicle. So unfortunately, we would not be able to collect, the contents of that smaller pail separately.
But do you not
I think
think
some
if
of
they could, yeah, if they could, more people would do it? Because I'm just thinking of my mother, for example, and myself. I'm just like, Jesus, cleaning this huge thing, it's kind of gross. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of off-putting. Whereas if I knew that people were collecting the small thing and I could clean it, it's much easier for somebody to do. Does that make sense? And is it not worth thinking about making it easier for the general population to do it? Because you want people to do it. And I fear if I'm thinking this, lots of other people are like, oh, I don't want my bin to be dirty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the challenge with a separate collection as well is because the regulation does allow for a fourth bin. So jurisdictions can provide a fourth bin that is food waste only. The challenge for the city is that adding a fourth separate bin and an entire fourth commodity to collect would just be too costly for the city. It would be too costly,
because the stopping and the
terms
picking
of,
up. Yeah.
Right, because we already have a fleet of 800 trucks servicing the 3 bins. If we were to add a fourth one on, then that's an additional set of trucks as well as drivers, fixed to that one new bin. I think in terms of when it comes to concerns about, the yuck factor in the green bin, some of those tips and tricks, so, using a paper bag, lining your food scraps in a paper towel, layering it between your yard waste should help to reduce. And our goal is to have, as little food waste placed into the bin as possible in the first place. So we're hoping it shouldn't cause too much of an additional, kind of yuck factor to what's already going into your green bin with your existing yard trimmings and yard waste.
What about newspaper? Because I'm just thinking newspaper's big and wide. You could do something like that.
Yeah,
that
newspaper.
Like line shit. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, newspaper liners, paper towels, brown paper bags, all of the above are great ways to try and keep
like
all
the
of those
Trader
foods
Joe bags would be
compacted.
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Charles.
Yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of feedback in terms of my experience. I live in a 13-unit building on a block that has all buildings with over 5 multifamily residential and over 3,000 residents on this really long, over quarter-mile street. And we have Athens as our service provider, and we opted in at the first opportunity to participate in this. And we're the only one on the street who does. And I've spoken to other HOAs and building owners on the street, and they're not going to do it until they're told they have to do it. So to me, it's a bit of a, it doesn't come across as a sincere effort when at the one point you're telling us, you're saying these buildings are not in compliance, but they have to opt in to participate. So if somebody has to opt in to participate, then it's not really a compliance issue. And I think that's something that frustrates me when I see the truck come every week to pick up one building's green waste, which is our 13-unit building. They make that trip down our street to the middle of our block, and there's all the fossil fuels that are attached to transporting that truck all the way down that street every week, and nobody else is participating. And so I would encourage you guys to figure out what you need to do to get more aggressive. And basically most of the building owners I've spoken to have said, we'll do this when they tell us we have to do it, and we're not going to do it before. Second issue I wanted to bring up is that to clarify the last question, you're not required to clean the insides of the big disgusting green bin. So that's something you need to be aware of. If you have the people in your building, just make sure they're clean on the outside, and part of your regular maintenance to make sure people clean it up if they spill it on the outside. It is kind of gross to look inside of it, but it's not that big of a deal. And then lastly, I have a question for you guys. How does this integrate with both the LASAN Healthy Soils program? Is that going to be involved in what you're doing? and also the larger Healthy Soils initiative that the state is doing in terms of generating, this stuff for the larger commercial agriculture. And if you could speak to both of those, I'd appreciate it.
So great. I'll take the first, and I'll turn over the other to James. So Charles, I can't disagree with anything you said for compliance with RecycLA. If the contracts had a single bundled rate and the RSPs could roll the bin out without an opt-in, that would be the optimum for compliance. Right now, the RecycLA contracts don't. We'd have to open the contracts and renegotiate them for a 3-bin package rate as part of the base rate, and not just a 2-bin. But compliance is beginning. So the businesses that says that I won't comply until they tell me is, I've put together all the letters and put together the schedule of rolling out the notice that you're out of compliance and you must be in compliance. So that's going to be coming from the city to hopefully help those over. I'm not going to do it until so because of this opt-in factor, which is not optimum for compliance. So we are moving that way. And then again, there's the 2024, which is which goes from more compliance to enforcement. Then they will know that what it means not to be in compliance. I'll be telling them in our compliance letters what will happen as this goes further. And then James, you want to talk about Healthy Soils a little bit?
Yeah, and then I would say in terms of Healthy Soils, we've gotten that question a lot because we actually rolled out the farmers market program prior to the curbside green bin. So right, people have asked, will that detract from the program? But the way sanitation is looking at it is that this is a menu of options that residents can use. So, we will still host our weekly backyard composting workshops that sanitation hosts. We will encourage residents to participate in their farmers market food waste drop-offs, to participate in using their curbside green bin for food waste. It really, at the end of the day, becomes what they are most comfortable with doing with their organics, and really just the end goal is making sure those organic wastes don't go into the landfill. And then as it relates to our Healthy Soils program, we're collaborating with our Healthy Soils and our biodiversity team on the farmers market program, community composting, regional composting hubs with nonprofits such as LA Compost. So there is a synergy between both programs. So we don't want them to basically be mutually exclusive from one another. So we are continuing to just make sure that there's more and more resources available to residents.
All right, thank you. I'm starting to feel the pressure of time because there are still several things that I want to mention, if not ask about. So let's hear from Pat and AJ and then try to wrap up. Oh, and Andrea, maybe you can raise your hand and ask your question if it's not getting answered in the chat. Pat.
Okay, really quick. I did want to know where all this stuff is going. You kind of just answered that. Are there examples of communities, possibly northern central California, that have implemented this program really successfully? Do we have some case studies on it? Because I think this is going to be really hard to get traction. So just saying.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Pat. So many cities in NorCal have had composting programs, and that's because historically most composting facilities are located in Northern California. So that was also one of the challenges and some of the timeline issues with implementing SB 1383 here in Southern California. We have worked to establish the capacity and the vendors that can provide the composting for us, and many of them have experience providing service in NorCal. So we are also looking to them to provide us, information, tell us about the quality of our material, see if there's any concerns with contaminants, so then we can bring that information back to our residents. So we are working both with the vendors and then also hoping to continue just pushing out more outreach and education to our customers to make sure we are, collecting quality material and producing good quality compost.
Okay, thank you. AJ?
Yeah, I guess a couple of questions. First one is in my area, we have a lot of ADU builders who are adding units to their properties now because of SB9. So I'm just curious if it's impacting that demographic. I think the second thing that I'm wondering too is if this has been communicated to all the landfills, because I do have someone on my board that's also on the committee with the Sunshine Canyon landfill.
Yeah, so in regards to ADUs, because they do receive a separate solid waste service, I believe, or they are treated similar to like a duplex, they will also have a requirement to comply. So ADUs should already either have a separate green bin or a shared green bin with like the main property, but each of those individual addresses is eligible to receive a kitchen pail. And then also that requirement to then, segregate the food scraps. And then in regards to the landfills, yes, I would safely assume that all landfill operators are familiar with the implementation of SB 1383 because many of the commercial solid waste providers and landfill operators also provide green bin services or similar services. So I think just in terms of the talk of the solid waste industry, SB 1383 is probably the biggest talk of the town over the past few years. So I would say they should be familiar.
Okay, because one quick thing is the only thing that we got from the Sunshine Canyon landfill was they were just simply telling us don't, be aware of the liquid waste. But I mean, we didn't receive any of that context. So I mean, I will have to consult my board member on that. But my board member is usually good about relaying this information from the Sunshine Canyon landfill. So I'm not really sure if that trickled down to this landfill.
Okay, it may be more the fact that I think the requirements would probably be more directly impacted on composting facilities, and really the landfill shouldn't notice any change other than there being less food waste in what's being dumped at their facilities. So in terms of requirements or anything related to the bill, there's nothing that would directly impact the landfill in terms of, let's say, requirements or participation.
Yeah, and to highlight, AJ, that the Sunshine Canyon landfills owned and operated by Consolidated. They're one of our RecycLA service providers. They go under the name Republic, but Republic is part of Consolidated. So there's a full understanding of SB 1383 and its requirements, because SB 1383 is actually it wasn't set up as an organic recycling regulation. It was actually set up as a greenhouse gas reduction regulation, and it was found that landfills are one of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gases in California, and one of the biggest contributors of the methane from landfills is food waste. So landfills are the reason, these regulations are in place. I would be highly surprised if they weren't aware of everything about 1383.
Okay, I'll have to ask them.
Please do.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to Andrea, and I see that Councilwoman Yaroslavsky is here, so I will make a few quick statements, and then we will roll over to her. So Andrea, go for it.
I was just wondering, to actually participate in the program of green waste for these multi-unit residential apartment buildings, is there a cost? Like, just so we know if we're going to pitch this to our building to implement this faster, is there any downside to it that they might not want to pay or something?
Yes, there is an additional cost for a green bin. And that cost, it varies just like your trash service does, what size, how often, how many to support the property. So that's also why I really, really encourage to take the time to look at all of your waste services and see if there's a way to drop down your black bin service, get some more blue bins out there. May not mitigate all the additional, may not zero out the additional costs, but it'll help mitigate it some. So really take advantage of all the program has to offer.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just say a few things that I wanted to ask or wanted to mention. One, it sounds to me like there's a real opportunity for outreach to residents of these larger apartment buildings. So I would love for neighborhood councils and LA Sanitation and everybody to think about that. Another thing is, one of the things I've learned over the last few years is I can eat my broccoli stalks and I can eat my cilantro stems and all these things that I actually didn't used to eat. So there are so many ways to just, you know, we talk about reduce and reuse and all that stuff. The first thing, and Dan, I think, mentioned this in the beginning, or James did, I forget, you know, buy less stuff. I mean, I tend to, you know, think I'm going to eat more healthily than I do. So I buy things that get spoiled, blah, blah, blah. But also you can eat more of the stuff you're buying than I think a lot of us realize or appreciate. So there's that stuff. And of course, I want to remind folks there are worm bins and you can compost at your home. And there's I forget what the Japanese thing is called, but there are these different ways to do this. And I think that's important because I'm thinking about all the carbon emissions that are going into the trucks that are taking our green waste somewhere. It strikes me as the whole system strikes me as super problematic, frankly. I think if we can be doing this stuff on site, that is the most carbon emissions friendly approach. So just like us to keep all those things in mind. And I did want to talk about biogas and biomass and find out if anybody's tracking how much energy it takes to schlep this stuff somewhere and all of that. And I wanted to ask about kitty litter because I have a cat and this has been driving me crazy. And I know you can't put it in the green bin, but I just wanted to ask why, but we can do that another day. This was great. I learned a lot, and thank you to James and Dan for sharing so much information and having such thorough responses to all of our questions. Any last words from the two of you?
No, just for me, thank you for having us and for all the interest. And I did want to make another mention. I think someone had asked about neighborhood councils, and you mentioned as well, Lisa, if any individual neighborhood councils would like us to present to their specific constituents, please feel free to reach out. We've already given a number of presentations to specific neighborhood councils or smaller community groups. So, you know, we're always happy to present the information and address questions from those groups.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All
And
right,
to be
thank you all.
continued. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we are moving to our second portion of the evening. I will spotlight Councilmember Yaroslavsky. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, for taking the time to do this. For those of you who do not know, she has been appointed chair of the Energy and Environment Committee, and she's also on a lot of other committees that are super relevant to what we do. So this is a really exciting opportunity, I think, for us to share, to find out what her goals and vision is for regarding sustainability and anything else she would like to talk about, and for us to share with her our thoughts and concerns and questions. So Councilmember Yaroslavsky, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes if you'd like to talk, and then we'll open it up and just invite people to share their thoughts or questions or whatever with you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks all for being here tonight. I want to start by thanking all of you for the work that you've been doing on your neighborhood councils. It's incredibly important, and looking forward to working with all of you. So I'm entering my third month on the council. I'm still somewhat new to this work from this vantage point, but I know many of you from years of working most recently for Supervisor Sheila Kuehl doing her climate and sustainability policy work at the county level, before that in the nonprofit climate sector. So, you know, one of the things that I'm most excited about the opportunity to connect with you tonight about is that perhaps more than any other entity at the city, our perspectives on sustainability and environmental policy work are really aligned at the neighborhood level. And so much of what we talk about at City Hall is actually carried out. I mean, the conversation you were just having about making sure people know what can go into the green bin and helping make it easier for people to do that. There can't be a disconnect between what we're doing at City Hall and how that plays out in terms of implementation. So as you all know, the work that we're doing at the city is going to be really important for fighting climate change, not just because of what we can do as the second largest city in the country to show the value proposition of if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere, but because so often when we reduce pollution and move ourselves in a greener direction, particularly in the energy and water side, we improve outcomes and make communities that have disproportionately borne the impacts of really poor environmental policies. We can alleviate those and have much better health outcomes. So for me, I see this work really as about improving the quality of our lives by building healthy, livable communities. Before I moved into the climate space, I was actually a land use lawyer. And so a big part of why this job was so interesting to me was because of the opportunity to rethink how we do planning and land use at the city. And, you know, we have proactive plans that are supposed to guide neighborhoods development, right? And ensure that we're building housing in the right places, that we're fostering a vibrant economy, that we're creating walkable communities. But as you all know, we haven't been doing much proactive planning, right? Everything is ad hoc and project-based because we're so understaffed on our community plan update program team. So apparently they're at 50% vacancies right now. So for me, that's a big part of why this job was so interesting. You know, how do we, as the West Side, the 5th District has the largest job centers outside of downtown LA, right? We've got Century City, UCLA, Cedars, and most of the people who work in those jobs can't afford to live anywhere near where they work. And so you have the West Side's notoriously bad traffic. So we have an opportunity not only to right size the jobs, housing imbalance, but also to create much more vibrant communities, more equitable, diverse communities on the West Side, get people out of their cars, really focus on first mile, last mile. We have Metro coming through, so mass transit that people are going to use for the first time since the red car. And so I'm really excited about all the opportunities presented by that, the intersection of transportation, land use planning, climate work. It'll be, and it'll also, you know, like I said, it'll reduce asthma, childhood asthma incidents, and really bad air quality. You know, if we do this right, increase local water supplies, there's a lot of stuff we can be doing at the hyperlocal level around multi-benefit projects and building upon what we did at the county around Measure W and figuring out how to leverage those dollars with Metro dollars. And so really thinking about what the built environment looks like and how we can increase climate resilience and sustainability, and also just make our neighborhoods more pleasant. And do it in an intentional way by really leveraging all the money that's out there. There's just so much money right now, particularly after the federal government just adopted the infrastructure plan. So on the council, I've got the honor of chairing the Energy and Environmental Committee. I'm the vice chair of the Ad Hoc Olympic Committee, which I think can really be used as a catalyst to accelerate a lot of the stuff we want to see on in our neighborhoods before the Olympics comes, particularly around our urban tree canopy, connected protected bike network, et cetera. I'm also on the Transportation Committee, the Planning and Land Use Committee, and the Budget Committee. And all of these together really touch on the quality of life issues that I just talked about, and also bring the opportunity to sort of think about in a coherent way how these all play together, right? One of the things that's been super frustrating so far in just 3 months is, you know, every sort of seemingly intractable issue, like poor quality of life, for example. There's no one department that fixes that, right? It's all these different departments working together, but of course they're not working together. And so I've been starting to have conversations with some of my colleagues about what better governance looks like around some of these issues so that we can have one conversation around something that's complicated, like the intersection of transportation, land use, and climate policy, right? So do we have joint committees? How do we start to think about integrating this work so that we don't have agencies all doing different things parallel to each other, but not working together to optimize outcomes? On the Energy and Environment Committee, we recently heard from DWP on their proposed green hydrogen project. So I know that that's something that you all wanted me to touch on. So there's a bunch of problems with this project, which I'll just say, for those of you who may not be familiar, the Scattergood gas powered plants down in Council District 11, DWP is proposing to repower it with green hydrogen. And there are no operational green hydrogen plants anywhere in the United States. There are some under construction. It's not clear where they're going to generate this green hydrogen or how they're going to get it to the plant, how they're going to do this in a way that is protective of public health. It's going to use a lot of water. There are a lot of things that they haven't figured out, including the technology itself, which isn't really there yet. So we put some guardrails around it and said, okay, you can move forward with doing your EIR and start to see what it might look like, but you got to come back regularly and show us that you can actually, in fact, build a green hydrogen plant and that it's going to be a net positive for the environment and you're going to mitigate all the concerns we have. And I'm not sure that they can do it, but we'll see. So I'm not going to get into too much more detail on that. If you want, we can talk about that later. In terms of the transportation committee, I'm really going to be focused on making it easier for people to ditch their cars. Most trips are very short, and the only reason we take our cars is because we don't feel safe not taking our cars. So the first mile, last mile gap from the many metro stations that are coming through the district, we've got 4 in the district and 2 adjacent in Beverly Hills coming through in the next couple of years, which is really exciting. The Purple Line, and then also we've got the Sepulveda project that is sort of in the EIR phase right now, and they're trying to figure out whether they're going to underground it or do a monorail or some combo of the two. We'll see. It's really important that we figure out how to make it easy for people to take mass transit. And I'm not on Metro, but I'll be working very closely with the mayor's office and whoever the reps are from the city to make sure that we're actually making it easy and safe and pleasant for people to take mass transit. And I think once we create those optimal situations and settings, people are going to happily ditch their cars. And then that gets back to the transportation and housing and jobs balance. I think we have a real obligation on the west side to put more housing near our job centers. We have parking structures, like surface parking structures in Century City that are just full of cars, which makes no sense. So there's a real opportunity, I think, to rethink, especially where you have the intersection of both a lot of jobs and a metro station. Do we need parking garages in the same way that we've built for them in the past? So really looking at a street by street level and seeing what we can update and how we can incentivize through upzoning workforce housing, not just market rate housing, right? So making it affordable for nurses and teachers and firefighters to actually live on the west side of Los Angeles. So that's going to be a priority for me too. I could keep talking all day, but I'll stop here. I'm looking forward to answering questions that you might have. And again, I want to thank you for your advocacy and work around these issues. The advocacy and the push that comes from the public around particularly hard policy lifts is so helpful. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you so that we can get a lot of this stuff done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was wonderful. That was a great overview, and I look forward to diving in. I forgot to say this earlier, but when you speak, please say your affiliation if it's not listed in your little, whatever that Zoom screen is called. And I did not forget to say, but I will repeat, please be succinct because I know there's a lot we want to talk about and not a lot of time. That said, Charles, go for it.
Hey, Katie, thank you very much for coming tonight. 2 quick questions. Number 1, what is your position, or do you support adding LA Sanitation's biodiversity plan to the general plan for the city? And second question, will you support requiring UFD and other public agencies to convert to planting native street trees and native landscaping plants going forward? Right now, they plant almost none.
Yeah, so your first question has to do with the biodiversity element going into the general plan. I have not yet been briefed on that, but that seems like an obvious thing to do. So I can't tell you definitively. I don't know why we wouldn't. There's a lot that we need to put into the general plan, including the climate adaptation and climate action plan. So there's yes. Also, hi, Charles. Charles was
Yeah.
like my #1 door knocker volunteer on the campaign. So just thank you, Charles. It's good to see you. And second, this is another issue that we've had lots of conversations about. I'm inclined to say yes, but I want to better understand fully whatever the pushback is, because it seems so obvious to me that we would go native. And whenever something like that seems so obvious, there's probably some reason. I don't know that it's a compelling reason or a particularly good reason, or if it's just the bureaucracy continuing to just do what bureaucracies do, which is trudge along. So, yeah, I mean, the street trees we've been using for the last 100 years are deplorable. I live on a street that has all palm trees. You know, it's insane. So I know that there's a hot debate right now around native versus drought tolerant, non-native. And, you know, I frankly don't have particularly strong feelings about it, except for the fact that I understand all the co-benefits that come when you have natives, right? It supports local biodiversity and all the native critters. And so that's obviously a good thing. We want them all to continue to survive and thrive. So I'm going to tentatively say yes and wait and see what the pushback is. But yeah, I mean, we're generally supportive of it. Yeah.
And I'm there to help you when you get that pushback, just so you know.
Okay.
I'm happy to have that conversation with you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Joanne?
Unmute. I can actually tell you what the pushback is. If you
I knew somebody
chair
would.
the Trees Committee and on CFAC. So here's the problem. Our parkways aren't big enough for the typical native tree. They're either very small or they're very large, and they require a 10-foot parkway. So to plant in a 10-foot parkway, you need to use your infrastructure bill. And the fact that you are not keen on a lot of parking, give an underutilized parking space over, divert the sidewalk into the street there, and plant a tree in that larger space, tree well, that will enable you to plant an oak tree. So there actually is a council file right now for the sidewalk repair program to get money for diverting sidewalks from the infrastructure bill. And I think that is a good idea. I think our NCSA is going to vote on it this week, probably. And I'll give you I'll put the number in the chat so that people and you can see, you know, the guests here tonight. But that is what the problem is. UFD is saying the size of the existing parkways at 4 to 6 feet isn't big enough for. I mean, there are a couple of native trees that they do plant in smaller parkways, but that's not going to give you the same kind of shade that we're looking for.
Joanne, you're muted.
Muted now.
The community plans, just real quick, you don't have to comment on it, but my experience has been that the planning department tries to steer us in those community plans and don't let us really give input. They say, don't you want duplexes? No, we want single family homes. Well, you should want duplexes, you know, and the bottom line is it comes out to be what they want, not what we want. So I'm very disillusioned by those. As far as tree preservation, people are working in silos, and the LADBS has been a big problem. We haven't been able to get significant trees on private property protected, especially in R1. Big, huge, beautiful trees may not be native, but they're going to go down by developers because they can. And especially with all the push to housing and the fact that they can build it faster if they cut down all the trees. Furthermore, LADBS uses clear lot, and they only mean the structures, but the developers take it to mean all the vegetation. So that's how we're losing our canopy. And then there are good bills to protect these trees, but they're in report backs that never come. So anytime there's a report back on a city council motion, especially from BOE, UFD, city forest officer, it's not going to happen. They just don't do them. So, you know, I'm happy to talk to you offline, but I've been at this for 8 years, and I have a wealth of knowledge about all of this, and it's pretty dismal at this point, unless we, you know, that's why we cleaned house and wanted so many new people. And then Metro, I worked 4 years for putting people on Metro, and you need parking lots at Metro stations because that's how you're going to get that first mile, last mile. People will drive to an Orange Line station and then go. So that's been my experience. Maybe, you know, you're not going to get people that have not ridden a bicycle in 40 years onto a bicycle.
All right.
Anyway,
Certainly
Thank you,
bikes aren't
that's
for
it. I'm done.
everybody.
I'm done. Thank you, Lisa. Sorry it took up so much time.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky, did you want to respond to anything, or are you good with us going to Lionel?
Yeah, we can go to Lionel. We should, just so you all know, my colleague Kristen Torres Pauling, who's my deputy chief of staff for policy and planning and transportation, is on. And so here she is. She's saying hi. So, you know, Joanne, it would be great for you to connect with Kristen after and talk
Great.
about some of this stuff in more detail.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And thank you, Kristen. Lionel. Lionel, you are also muted.
Good evening, Councilmember Yaroslavsky, Katie. Thank
evening.
you for coming here. I met Councilmember Rahman this morning at the Ciclavia bicycle feeder ride, so that was awesome. Speaking of transportation, because I heard you say about many car trips are like a couple miles or less. I've heard from Michael Snyder that many car trips are 3 miles or less. If we could build pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure that will be safe, I would think more people would use their bicycles or take public transit. You know, for example, bicycle if it's 3 miles or less. But many people don't use bicycles because of the safety risk associated with sharing the road with motorists, and many motorists are very they're not very conscientious of their surroundings, and they put pedestrians and bicyclists at risk. And this is why we still have an issue with people driving their cars for a trip that's like 1 or 2 miles, you know, and I've used my bike. I'm also a bicyclist, but I also drive too. But I'm trying to transition to more public transit and bicycling because of the health benefits, and trying to get to my destination if it's a couple of miles, which is not a big deal. But that I just want to add to your what you said. And number 2, I was at the meeting with the Energy and Environment Committee about the green energy in Santa Monica, Council District 11. I am for transitioning to away from fossil fuel, and I want to LA to embrace more cleaner energy, greener energy. But I did hear concerns from environmental advocates, Sierra Club, and other that green energy it's not produced at a mass scale. It's my understanding, and that it's costly and it consumes too much water. So those some of the things that I've heard, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, if there's other ways to fix that or address that, or maybe other sources of cleaner energy, those are just the concerns I've heard from other people. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Lionel. Yeah, to your first point, most people take most of their trips in the car, and most of those trips are under 3 miles. And most people don't feel safe riding their bike around LA. There have been too many horror stories. And so, you know, I'm committed to, while acknowledging that a lot of people aren't going to get on a bike because they haven't ridden a bike in 40 years and that's just not their jam. But a lot of people would if they felt safe doing it. And so we need a protected, connected network for people to ride their bikes. And we need to make intersections safer for pedestrians walking and people riding their bikes. And it's fortunately something that's squarely within the purview of the council office to do. So that's something I'm committed to doing. And as far as the green energy thing goes, everything you said, right, that's right. The other concern is really around whether it's actually going to be green hydrogen, which is, you know, 100% hydrogen rather than hydrogen that's blended with natural gas. And right now, all the plants that are hydrogen plants blend their natural gas and hydrogen. And so you're still using natural gas. You spend $1 billion, you retrofit your facility, and it's still natural gas. So they have to show that they're not going to just do that because that's unacceptable. So yes, I agree we need to transition towards 100% renewable, 100% green energy economy. There are other ways we could do that besides moving to green hydrogen. We could build a bunch of wind. We could build more solar. We need to make sure that the transmission lines are resilient enough and sort of strong enough to handle all of that. Right now, they're not. And one of my concerns is that if we put all of our eggs, proverbial eggs, into the green hydrogen basket, we're going to be ignoring all these other upgrades to the grid that would allow us to bring more 100% renewable power in from other places. And so, you know, DWP is there's a huge storm right now. Their power's out to like 50,000 customers. I've been hearing about it all weekend. And so the notion that they're going to build like a first of its kind facility in the world to, you know, burn green hydrogen when they can't keep the lights on during a storm makes me, you know, I'm skeptical. Let's just put it that way. But I'm willing to entertain the possibility of it.
Thank you. That's super helpful. Nish, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to that earlier conversation, it would be great if Streets LA could kind of create a list where they identify tree species type to kind of identify the type of trees that have low levels of biogenic emissions to like low levels of volatile organic compound emissions. So the trees that we do plant or the city does plant doesn't contribute to our air quality problems. Just throwing that out there. So yeah, anyway, hi, Councilmember Yaroslavsky. My name is Nish Krishnamurthy. I'm the Sustainability Liaison for D-Link, Downtown LA Neighborhood Council. And as an avid transit user, totally appreciate your emphasis and focus on transit and land use issues. So thanks for that. Keep up the great work. So as the Sustainability Liaison, I'm interested on, you know, a few, like, I was just wondering, like, what are your, are there any like motions or specific motions that you plan on bringing up this year to maybe like, so that, you know, the city, that neighborhood councils could maybe get behind and like, you know, write letters of support to their respective council members to kind of support, or maybe we could just write letters in advance of those emotions just so it's on their radar. Yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I mean, one thing that we've directed the planning department do is basically update their general plan to include the climate action and adaptation plan. It's basically folding it into the general plan so that it's actionable rather than just something that Mayor Garcetti had, because right now it's not legally enforceable. And I think if they slow walk that, I think we're just gonna have to ride them and make sure that they actually do it. And they always have an excuse and they're understaffed. So that's not sort of an imminent thing right now. But so that's one thing. I think as we build out the bike infrastructure, that's super controversial. Like, and whenever you take away a lane of vehicular traffic, there's huge pushback. And I don't see how we can claim to be moving the city in a sustainable direction if we're not taking cars off the road and making it easier for people to take other forms of transportation. And so I know that that's going to be massively controversial, and I'm going to need lots of people from all over the city, but particularly in 5, advocating for that bike infrastructure. And also for affordable and homeless and workforce housing near our jobs, which I see as being a climate issue, because right now those people are driving from very long distances. And, you know, I think that we have a real opportunity to put that housing on top of our metro stations, adjacent to our metro stations, where those jobs are. And that's going to be controversial too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll try to be very fast. One of the things that we've discovered over the past 3 or 4 months is that now that we're slowly coming out of COVID, that there is a effort by the state to move everybody back to an in-person meeting structure. One of the beautiful things that we've learned as a result of COVID is that we can actually bring people together much easier on a Zoom technology, as an example. Kind of like to think what your thoughts are about giving the option to the 99 neighborhood councils the choice, which way they want to go. As just a quick reference to you, there are 35 people on this call or more. If all of them were in their car driving to a location, ... I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm at home right now, and it's nice to be at home right now because I put 1 kid to bed, 2 more are going to go to bed soon. And yes, all the environmental reasons why, but it's also convenient. We all have stuff going on. You know, I'm sure most of us are wearing sweatpants, the bottom half of sweatpants, right? So like, one of the only nice things to come out of COVID is that we got comfortable with this technology. And I think that it should be an option for people. I actually seconded one of my colleagues' motions to allow neighborhood councils to continue to work remotely or in some sort of a hybrid, because not everyone's going to want to have to drive somewhere. And if you have kids and there's childcare issues or whatever, I mean, frankly, just walking to your car at night, if you're a woman or a man, frankly, I park on the street, and it's nice to not have to think about whether or not you're going to have to do that and whether you're going to call to have someone come meet you when you walk up or whatever. So there's no, as far as I can tell, other than like some marginal utility of like seeing each other in person and schmoozing, like it's so much nicer to be able to do it on Zoom. So I fully support it, and whatever I can do to help push it, let me know.
Thank you. That's great. Melanie.
Oh, great. Hey, Katie, it's nice to see you.
Hi, Melanie.
So I'm here as the Studio City Neighborhood Council Sustainability Liaison. Bouncing off of something you said, I'm interested to know if you have been involved in the city's response to Senator Stern's motion last year regarding the general plan 1425, requiring the city to update its open space element of the general plan. This is something that the city started to do in 2017, and I was part of the working group working very hard on that, and that got derailed and just dropped after about 10 months, which was very, very frustrating. So I'm wondering if anybody is looking at the general plan and all the various updates that need to be included into our general plan process that can help us with our climate adaptation goals, and if they're being looked at together, and if there have been conversations with the planning department. I know they're understaffed. Are we looking at bringing in some social science expertise into the process? Because I think it might be really important to have that in the planning process as we move forward. And also just to note that in the general plan updates that were taking place last year on public safety, I would love to have a a rethink on a couple of the elements that didn't go far enough in terms of fire and flood. Because if we don't consider our options in high fire risk areas and 100-year floodplains, we're doing ourselves a disservice now that especially now that we have the UCI flood study out. We need something that can put guardrails around this push to develop in these high risk areas as we're meeting our housing goals.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing I wanted to throw out there. And as you know, my jam is mostly city, little more city than county, and we're really the nexus of water, land use, and climate change. And I had a chance to geek out a little bit with Gary when you first got into office, but I'm looking forward to a follow-up with you and Gary and Kristen on some of these things, particularly around the planning and around potential for charter reform that looks like it might be coming to help us deal with some of the stuff that Joanne was talking about, trees being the responsibility of 4 different departments, for instance. Some of the water stuff that's split across different departments, the fact that we don't really have an environmental department, all that kind of stuff we can get out under charter reform, and I would love to have a chat about that.
Yeah, you know, all of that sounds obvious and important. And I will say that one of the things that's been most surprising, so I was at the county for 7 years, and I thought the bureaucracy of the county was a mess. And then I got to the city, and I brought some county folks with me, and we walk into each other's offices like 5 times a day and say, "Oh my God, it's
hell,
so
yeah."
dysfunctional."
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And it's not that there aren't great people there trying. It's that, one, they're all massively underfunded. 2, there are so many vacancies right now because of the hiring freeze during COVID and the fact that it's impossible. Cities across the country, but particularly in big cities where it's expensive to live, are having a hell of a time hiring people. And so I remark at least once a day, I can't believe anything works at all. Like, I can't even believe the trash gets picked up because it's such a mess. And so, and the answer is usually no when you ask for something reasonable, like an updated open space element, right? Like, that seems like an obvious thing to want to do, or safety around flood and fire risk. These are all things that we should be doing. And so I'm, of course, happy to push for all of these things. And we need to figure out how to unstick the hiring process and make it easier to bring people on board and keep them across all of our departments. Anyway, but yes, all of that sounds good, Melanie.
Good, yeah, and I'll just remind that the Stern bill makes it a requirement that we update that open space element by January 1st, 2026.
And did he find money for us to do it, or did he just?
He didn't apparently have to, right? It was something we were supposed to be doing anyway, so it wasn't something that he had to find money for us to do. The bill passed last year. It requires every city and county to update its local open space plan by January 1st, 2026. It's 1425, Kristen.
Thanks, Melanie.
Yeah, sure. And some of this, I think a lot of this is really sort of structural plaque. We really built our systems, the infrastructure of our departments and the way they work for 20th century operations. And we're having to try to pivot, a big hairpin turn to 21st century realities. And if we don't spend time every day taking a deep breath and looking under the hood at some of those structural barriers, we're just spinning our wheels. So
that's right.
That's where I'm happy, and I geek out. So always happy to be a sounding board there, because I've been focusing on this crap for so long. But thank you and welcome.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. So the structure of governance regionally, but certainly at City Hall, is doesn't account for the fact that we don't do single purpose infrastructure projects anymore, right? Everything now needs to be multi-benefit.
Right.
Not only because that's what all the funding streams require, but because it's the right thing to do.
Necessary, but our departments don't want to do it, and they're not trained to do it. And they've literally said to me directly that they are not going to do it because they're going to keep doing what they know how to do. And they don't know how to do this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea.
Hi, good evening, council member. I am a constituent. I'm also an environmental justice advocate, and it's so good to be with you tonight. There's a couple of things. One is, as a DWP ratepayer, I am very, very much shocked by a few things that are happening. I sat on the stakeholder meetings for the LADWP 100 study, and I was absolutely shocked to be sitting next to people like DWP, Solga Gas, Valero, Tesoro, like all the people who basically got us into this mess, but very much absent were any members of tribes, environmental justice organizations. And to me, that just like absolutely appalling. But even more appalling was the fact that when they were presenting this different scenarios, they were basically saying that the people who put it together were people from Worley Parsons. And I happen to know who they were because my husband used to work for them. And they used to, basically, these people build gas power plants for a living. So when you hire people like that, they're of course going to find, a way to build this type of dirty infrastructure. And I asked why, and they said that because they're used to working with them. And I don't think that's a good reason. And I think that's why now they're really looking at these so-called green hydrogen, and calling it green doesn't make it so. And the fact is that hydrogen is a much smaller molecule than gas. And DWP already had a gas leak that basically went on for 3 years. And NASA had to tell them that went on for 3 years. I was at that gas plant when we took a tour for the LA 100 study. And I saw that leak. Basically, my whole car was basically covered on this like film of gas. And I told one of the engineers, and he dismissed me. And that to me is really telling. And that's why I know that they cannot be trusted with something like that. So the other thing is that we kept asking them, why cannot we have microgrids instead of having these big transmission lines? We're living in a seismic area. So I really think that the way to go is having more microgrids and more power right generation where we live. I myself, I'm an advocate of having, again, the power where we have it, because that way we don't lose all this efficiency. And I also think that the cheapest kilowatt is the one we don't have to produce. And one of the council motions that we had about 4 years ago was that they discovered 4% of buildings are using 50% of the electricity. That's an immense amount of waste. So really, we need to focus on tackling that waste. That way we don't have to recreate all this power that is going to go to waste. But also, I've been trying to electrificate my own house, and I'm just hitting every just obstacle and trying to get the rebates that I'm eligible for at the city level, at the state level, at the federal level, and it's just being really daunting. And again, this is like a goal of mine, and I know that I've been working really hard for it, but it should be easier for people to adopt this type of solutions. And I would love for you to maybe join forces with the county, with our state legislature, some of our elected officials, and whether it's our new Congresswoman Sidney or Ted Lieu, and have a town hall and explain to us what are the rebates that we're eligible for. Because I think that will prompt more people to adapt this clean energy that is going to help us all with these type of scenarios. One of the things that I was appalled, and I never got my rebate for my cistern, which is now overfilling. But the thing is, when I was looking to buy the cistern, I found out that there's actually a business to rent rain barrels and cisterns in the city just to pass code. Because as soon as you get the certificate of occupancy, you can actually take them down.
Wow.
And I think that's a huge loophole that we need to make sure that we eliminate, because we're in this is not a drought anymore. This is climate change, and we need to adapt, and we need to make sure that we have the water that we need where we need it, and it's here. And the reason I have collection for rainwater is not just so that I can irrigate my edibles that I have in my own backyard, but also we're going to have an earthquake, and I want to have that water for other things that I know that I can use in case we have an earthquake. So I don't want to take all the time, but I just wanted to thank you for your time, and thank you for being my council member, for listening to us. And again, I'm very, very scared about green hydrogen in my backyard having an explosion like the Lebanon one, because hydrogen can be stored as ammonia, is something that really scares the life out of me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Kristen, did you take notes? I'm deeply skeptical of green hydrogen too. And all the things, the alternatives that you talked about are things that we also are pushing for, and we're going to be demanding that they actually do at the same time as they're, doing their EAR and going through this process, because I don't see how they're actually going to be able to deliver a green hydrogen plant. And even if they could, for all the reasons you talk about, green hydrogen is problematic. It leaks, it's explosive, etc. It burns at a higher temperature, so there's criteria pollutants that are much more than even natural gas. And so it's, yes. And then as far as incentivizing and making it easier on the demand management side, we need to be doing a better job to get people to use less. And then we also need to make it easier for people to do the right thing. If we want people to electrify, put in, electric water heaters, we need to make it easy for them to do it. It needs to be easier. Nothing involving DWP is easy, as far as I can tell. I mean, 3 months in, the vast overwhelming majority of calls we get to complain about something is a complaint about DWP. They're either, digging up a pipe and doing this huge project, and they've taken all the parking away from our neighborhoods, or whatever, or the power's been out for the 15th time since January 1. Yes, it's a hot mess, and we're on it. And in terms of making it easier for people to do the right thing, my husband and I went through something similar when we updated our house, and it was a nightmare trying to get the rebates and figure out what you qualified for. And nothing is easy, and it should all be easy, because we should be making it easy for people to do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, we have, I think, 4 more hands raised, and I haven't even gotten to my little list. And Councilmember Yaroslavsky was going to leave us in 3 minutes. Are you able to stay a little bit longer?
Yeah, I can stay till 8:30.
Okay, and then we will have that would mean our meeting, we'll do a few things to wrap up, if that's okay, folks, if you can hang in with us until about 8:40, but we'll try to be quick. Faith.
Hi, first I share the same concerns about green hydrogen at Scattergood. And I really appreciate you putting amendments in on the ordinance. And I really appreciate you also putting a motion in for a report back on alternatives. I think guardrails are really important. I think one of the concerns I have when I'm sifting through all this is, as amazing as it is to have them be able to report back whenever the council is asking for it, I don't see where there's another opportunity for the council to be able to vote on approval. It feels like it's just LADWP board that gets to do that. So is there, like, if this project doesn't go well and it's not looking good, where do you see the city council being able to intervene and stop it before we put in a lot of money, or before it gets built and becomes a problem?
Yeah, I think we could 245 it, and I think we'd have the votes, which is basically after there's a decision made by the DWP commission, we could bring it to the full council. And I think we probably had the votes to kill it a couple weeks ago, and decided not to, just to see, like, let's give them a chance to show that this is possible. I think they are so far away from showing that it's possible that I don't see how it's going to happen. But I think getting the votes we need to tank it using section 245, which allows the full council to pull a decision of an agency level decision or a commission level decision, and just equivocally go the opposite direction. We have that tool, and I know it's a high threshold, but given the many risks and problems with this project, I think we'd have what we need. So I share your concern, but I think it's totally doable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sharday, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yes, you are. Hold on. Sorry about that. Yeah, so actually, I was looking over the Los Angeles River Plan, and one of the tenets was about housing affordability and the negative effects on displacing. Oh, I'm with the Indian Developmental Affairs for my tribe, Taos Pueblo. And one of the things, there's all these, what the action courses were, like land acquisition adjacent, or boosting the affordable housing outside of that, or strengthening tenant policies. Whereas I think we're really missing a great opportunity, rather than, it seems like, negatively displacing homeless. That's exactly what that says we're going to do. We're just going to move them outside, and we don't have the infrastructure to have those supports in place. Whereas there's plenty of things like the Eco Village for homelessness is actually in Long Beach. It's a nonprofit, and that's where one of the markers is that starts the river plan. There's also, urban gardening homes and communities in Georgia and Florida, where they actually have and develop, they learn how to farm, they get training and skills that they can use for jobs later, but they farm the food, they grow it, they cook it, they place it, they have urban cafes, and they house the homeless on site. So we have this kind of push for let's make it accessible, and people can, more pedestrian and trails and parks and things like that, which is great, but they're not really actually investing economically into the river plan. Whereas we have, I don't want to say a workforce, but we have people who can, one thing was maintaining for the floodplains, the affordability of maintaining the facilities. Well, you can train people to help do that. Or if are you going to build wetlands for the floodplains? Are they going to be surface or subsurface wetlands? None of that stuff is really addressed. They're just kind of, oh, that's what we plan on doing, but none of those, how are we going to do that, are some of the specific details. So I guess I'm just kind of throwing that out there, that the displacement of the homeless, it just seems like, oh, let's just move them out again, as opposed to developing that area and programs in that area that could, increase the biodiversity and the ecosystem by having people farm, native plants, or etc. Anyways, that's all I was going to say about that.
Yeah, you raise a couple of, I mean, there's a bunch there, and all of it makes sense, right? Moving people without providing them with a place to go is just compounding misery and not solving homelessness. And so, as we move folks off of the streets or next to the river, wherever it is, they need to be moved into housing. And then as part of that, workforce programs, jobs training programs, partnering with the LA Conservation Corps and others that do a lot of this work, so that we're giving people jobs and giving them an opportunity to earn a living and also be part of the solution around a lot of this is really important. So, and there's money in Measure W for education programs and job training programs. And one of my frustrations the last couple of years has been that they haven't really developed those programs. And so there's millions of dollars to do that work that just isn't happening. And what you talk about with the River Master Plan, I think would dovetail nicely with the funding that's available through Measure W to do workforce development and job training.
Thank you. Polly. Polly, are you there? Okay, we'll go to Ji Young and circle back to Polly if she's there.
Hello again. I am also on
Hi.
the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance as a liaison to the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. So I think all the corruption in LADWP plus
you know, the shadiness of the rate hikes to me just points to LADWP needing to be a public utility. I would like to see the storm water infrastructure ramped up because of the drought, and you know, it's like green jobs. So yeah, that's something that I would like to see. I would be remiss if I did not mention that I'm also a public bank organizer, and NCSA has supports it, and there is a feasibility study happening right now, which LA City Council previously unanimously voted in favor of the viability study, at least. So I hope that you will continue the City Council's support of public banking, because it can, you know, that savings from the interest that's paid to the Wall Street banks can be reinvested into, you know, green projects and housing and whatnot. I also, you know, I did talk about in our meeting, in another space, I followed up and talked about the capital infrastructure planning, which is in line with what you're talking about, not having like all these departments siloed. It feels like all of the like sustainability programs are siloed within the departments, and there needs to be a cohesive, broader planning of sustainability amongst the departments and together. So I hope that in the capital infrastructure planning, I hope that you'll work on capital infrastructure planning, because we're one of the major cities that doesn't have that. And I hope that as part of that, we can have like better sustainability planning. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say, one of the things that I started to work on and then didn't get a chance to really work on because COVID hit was coordinating the big regional money streams, the recent measures W, H, A, and M, which combined are about $1 billion a year. And you know, each was passed in its own silo. Measure W for water, H, the homeless county's homeless measure, A, the county's parks program, and obviously M, Metro. And really trying to bring those agencies and departments together to do integrated infrastructure planning, for all the reasons that we know we need to be doing that. So I'm committed to reinvestigating that and trying to bring that to the fore of the city from this new role. You know, I think that there's some receptivity from the Board of Supervisors, and I know Mayor Bass is interested in leveraging money to bring more resources to LA. So yeah, and in terms of DWP, you know, one of the things I learned today was when I was fielding lots and lots of frustrated texts and phone calls and emails from constituents who'd been without power for 3 days, was that our rates, DWP's rates, are actually about a third to half as much as what Edison customers pay, and rates are actually pretty low. And we all suffer for that because the grid is so unreliable. And so, you know, we as ratepayers are going to have to decide whether or not we want to agree. Well, I guess the commission would decide to raise rates, and we all would get to vote on whether or not we wanted to keep electeds in power after that happened. But you know, we've got 100-year-old infrastructure that's wildly outdated, and the power goes out a lot. In some parts of the district, it's gone out 10, 15 times this year alone, sometimes for days at a time. And so, you know, we pay for it one way or the other, we pay for it. And that's not to say the DWP is not a mess, but on this, we do have low rates. That's one of the things that DWP is known for, despite
right.
increases from 5, 6, 7 years ago.
It is 8:30. Polly, did you want to say one sentence? Terry, did you want to say one sentence?
Okay, one sentence. I don't know if this falls more under building and safety or this is planning and land use, but I would hope that we can look at having developers have to do more for permeability. I see in my neighborhood where they haul in dirt, they lift the back of the property 5 feet, they put retaining walls, which obstructs the flow of the water. And I'm told is all they have to do is make sure the water goes from the back of the property to the street. And there's nothing about permeability. And with densification, this seems to be a greater problem. And so we had flooding outside of our home and things like that because of the way the water is just being forced into the street and down the way. So I don't know, again, that's it.
Yeah, I think permeability is probably a combination. Again, that's an issue. That's at sort of the intersection of those two departments. You can plan for it and then you can come up with guidelines and development regulations and enforcement through building and safety. So both.
If I could, Lisa, can you hear me now? I'm really sorry, but I have no internet because Spectrum is down. So that's why I'm on the telephone and it's very erratic. But my question,
you have one sentence because
okay, my question was, the council member Katie mentioned that there's floods of money coming from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, but given she also mentioned that there are very few people, there's a shortage of people at City Hall. So what I want to know is how are we going to get this funding? Is it going to be done by the committees? Do we have to write proposals? How will we do this? Or is this incredible moment going to go sailing by and we won't be able to use it for all the things that our city so desperately needs?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the state is sort of the main receptacle for receiving a lot of it. And then there's going to be an opportunity to apply to the state for a lot of this funding. And then a big chunk of it will come to us by virtue of the fact that we're the largest city in California. But yeah, the departments are on it and working with, we're working with our state colleagues to make sure that those resources flow down to LA. We won't just not get it.
Well, thank you, everybody. This was such a rich conversation. Thank you, Councilwoman Yaroslavsky. This was fantastic to hear so much from you. And thank you, Kristen. I will follow up with you. And thank you because you're the one who
great
is really needing to absorb all of this.
We could do so much.
So thank you. And if other folks can stay on while we just do a few things to wrap up and give announcements, that would be wonderful. Thank you. We look forward to working more closely with CD5. All righty, let's go and let's try to do this super quickly and do committee announcements. I will share my screen with you so our chairs can share what they are up to. That went away. It was up and it's gone now. Sorry, bear with me. Let's do announcements while I'm pulling up the screen again. Does anybody have announcements?
I do, Miss Lisa.
Go for it.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Just quick announcement. The next CicLAvia event is in April 16 at Mid City meets Pico Union. Thank you.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Anybody else?
Looks like Carrie. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name's Carrie Ann Frericks. I own a company called Circular Fashion LA, and I'm interested in starting to work with neighborhood councils to co-sponsor events to do community clothing collection events that are partnered with real fun, interesting education and re-dye events. So I can have more information on that later at an upcoming meeting, but I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, Carrie and I have had some very inspiring conversations. So I'm really looking forward to us sharing more with you folks about what she's up to. Anybody else? Okay, I just want to share that our next meeting is going to be March 12th. That is our regular meeting. That is the night of the Oscars, but we have been told that you folks will want to meet anyway because that's who you are. And we're gonna have a CD6 candidate forum, and I think we will have, it's looking like we'll probably have all candidates. So it should be a very rich conversation that I think will dovetail really nicely with the one we had tonight with a new council member. Is that it on announcements? I don't know if I can see everybody since I'm sharing my screen. Chime in if you want to, or raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll just go to, okay, go ahead again, Lionel. And then
Sorry,
go to
yes,
Polly.
I'm not sure if this is relevant to this committee or alliance, but tomorrow we're having a bunk meeting at 12 p.m. for those who might be interested in attending for a special meeting for regarding virtual meetings. Thank you.
No, that's great. I saw that in the chat. That's super helpful. I will try to attend. Thank you. Okay. Our advocacy, we are working on the wildlife ordinance. I did not have, nobody asked the council member this evening about that, but we really do want to follow up with her on that. Also, Sepulveda Basin, more to come on that. Charter reform, more to come on that. And as Lionel just mentioned, neighborhood council meetings, virtual or in person, which G Young and others have pointed out is a sustainability issue. So there's more to come on that. And our next meeting is going to be March 5th, and it will be with Abundant Housing LA. This is our second meeting with them as we work to figure out what we have in common and how we can support each other's efforts and how we might strengthen each other's efforts. Polly, go ahead. We're being a little messy now. Jump in around, but that's okay.
Sorry, I thought you said the next meeting was going to be March 12th.
Yes, I did.
But, and then what is it March 12th or March 5th? Or they're going to be two?
Well, there's an
meetings?
advocacy committee meeting March 5th. And
I see.
Sorry, you're not looking at the slides probably. I'm looking at the advocacy. I was looking at the advocacy committee slide.
Okay,
So
I'm
that's what I was
so
talking
sorry.
about.
My question, I wanted to just tell you that in our Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council meeting, Sustainability Committee, we're thinking of having another seminar about.
Okay, if you're thinking about it, let's talk off. Your connection is not good enough, so let me know if it doesn't exist. Let me know. I'm going to mute you because we can't hear you. Sorry, I tried to mute her and it didn't work. I muted Melanie because her. Oh, she's unmuted.
Yeah, I just want to note that the Sepulveda Basin motion is
the overall.
Oh, that's so funny. Polly's muted and I can still hear her. She must be on two.
So the Sepulveda Basin motion is scheduled for its first of 3 committees this coming week, March 1st at 8:30 in the morning, the Neighborhoods Committee. So for those of you who have either signed our resolution or who have weighed in with your neighborhood council on CISs on any of the earlier Sepulveda Basin files, that would be a good time to bright and early weigh in to the Neighborhoods Committee. It's the first of 3 committees that council file has to go through. And I know the Advocacy Committee was weighing in, but I don't know if they're going to be able to submit anything before the 1st. So
yes, we will not. And I can talk to you more about that offline, but we will
okay.
not. So
But any individuals then or folks who are interested in that, this is the first of 3 hurdles it has to go through. So consider Wednesday morning, 8:30. Thanks.
Thank you. And I saw your email, but I'm always behind. Thank you.
Yeah,
Glenn,
same.
go ahead. Glenn, are you there? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I put into chat, but related to virtual meetings to enable that for neighborhood councils, but also all the other local governments statewide. There's Senate Bill 411 Portantino, and even though neighborhood councils can't directly lobby state, there's no reason that the Sustainability Alliance can't. So if the advocacy committee could consider Senate Bill 411 and support amendments to include elected neighborhood councils, that would help us all out. Thank you.
That's a great point. Thank you. Okay, let's go to transportation. Muriel, the board member who I did not introduce. Here she is, and she's also chair of our transportation committee. And you are muted, although you don't look muted, so something's wrong with your audio. Okay, so we are going to go to trees while we hope that Muriel can figure out her audio. Go ahead, Joanne.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm putting in chat the council file that I mentioned earlier for sidewalk repair alternatives. There was a lawsuit and the judge ruled in favor of the environmentalists, although he hasn't given an order to put a stay on tree removals yet. But there is a motion that Councilmember Lee put in to investigate sidewalk repair alternatives. It's unfortunately a report back, but it does include applying for some federal funding. And we have an amendment asking that if there is no federal funding for this, that the city bear the burden for the alternatives like meandering sidewalks and bump outs. And if you need more information about what that means, just shoot me an email, trees@ncsa.la. You can see it on this slide. Our next meeting is March 25th, virtual at 1:30, that's Saturday. And I am finally going to do the interactive city tree inventory demonstration. It's really great to use. And it's street trees and park trees, but it does help you identify what's out there. It does not give you the insider information as to what the condition of the tree is, but even just knowing that what kind of tree it is sometimes can be very helpful. And then tentatively also at that meeting, Charles and I are working on getting together some tree considerations for demolitions and development guidelines for developers and planning and land use committees regarding trees. So this is a work in progress. We may have a preliminary meeting. So if you want to be on that little committee, I have a couple of volunteers so far that we'll make maybe a little brief outline that we can take to the committee and then get people's input as to what they would like to see. So that's last Saturday in March. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Muriel, do you think you fixed your whatever's happening? Nope. Okay, well, I will
Can I add one thing, Lisa? So are we sending this council file for CIS to NCSA reps?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
So it'll be more explained when you get the information to vote on, and then you can have your individual neighbor councils also do CISs if you want. Thanks.
Okay, so let's see, our I don't know when our next meeting is, but we had a meeting February 2nd. And I think these are the things we discussed in that meeting, if I am correct. So the Livable Communities Initiative, street widening, and car sharing, which you will also be hearing more about car sharing super soon, because actually at our March 12th meeting, we will also be asking you folks to vote on a car sharing initiative. So stay tuned for that. More information on that at our next meeting. And then energy. AJ, are you here?
Yep.
Okay, if you can go through this, that'd be great. And then we'll close out.
Okay, so starting on the Murphy drill site.
And I should introduce you. Sorry, AJ is our new co-chair along with Dan of the Energy Committee. So welcome, AJ.
Thank you. As far as the Murphy drill site, just kind of the high level overview is it looks like there is still room to take action on the site operations. They do have Ravi here though, who I think could probably speak a little better on this context.
That's true, but we are trying to close out. So we can just say you guys will hear more about this, I think, because we're going to probably ask you to vote on this via email soon, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could definitely table it. We also had advocates from the Vista involving the Vista Hermosa from the Sunrise Movement. The high level overview on that was continuous development within the area without capping existing oil wells. One of the action plans that we were considering was actually touring the area to get more context. So there's more to come on that.
And anybody will be welcome to join the tour. I'll put it in an email. So we're gonna learn more.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And as far as the scattergood update that was covered by our council members, one of the actions that I did take from the MOU meeting was I did request the in-depth study, which they said was debunking the concerns on the nitrous oxide. But one of the findings that I found is it's still not addressing the issues and concerns of exposure to ammonium and methane. So I asked for it was Stephanie Spicer to address that. We'll see if I receive that. So and then the other thing too was we were also looking into setting something up at the LA Public Library for the induction stoves, which continues to be a push. High level overviews. I plan on contacting somebody I work with at LADWP to see what resources we have available. Those are my updates.
Perfect. That was fantastic.